In the drowsy warmth of a River View Heights afternoon, where sunlight spilled like liquid gold across neat lawns and cicadas hummed a lazy tune, Evelyn Harper's modest brick house stood quietly at the end of Willow Lane. The air carried the sweet scent of her freshly baked peach cobbler, cooling on the kitchen sill, mingling with the faint tang of rosemary from her tiny herb garden. Evelyn, 75, moved with a grace that belied her years, her faded navy robe brushing the floor, her worn slippers whispering stories of a life well lived. She'd raised 3 children, managed the town library for decades, and stood steadfast by her husband, Thomas, a Marine, through 3 deployments. Now, all she wanted was peace, a clean porch, a garden to tend, and the freedom to hang her late husband's flag, a yellow banner with a coiled rattlesnake and the words "Saw Don't Tread on Me, Saul," fluttering proudly by her porch swing. But peace, in River View Heights, was about to be shattered. 3 knocks sharp, deliberate, not the friendly tap of a neighbor or the hurried rap of a deliveryman sliced through the stillness. They carried weight, a demand for submission. Evelyn paused, dusted flour from her hands, and approached the door, opening it halfway, her instinct for strangers. 2 men stood there, dressed in crisp black uniforms, their shirts emblazoned with HOA Enforcement Unit in stark white letters. Black baseball caps shaded their faces, dark sunglasses hid their eyes, and plastic badges gleamed cheap and unconvincing, like props from a child's costume bin. The taller one, who called himself Carter, stood rigid, chin high, exuding rehearsed authority. The shorter, stockier one, introducing himself as Doyle, clutched a clipboard like a shield, his fingers twitching nervously. "Afternoon, ma'am," Carter said, his voice clipped, devoid of warmth. "We're here on official business. Violations of neighborhood decorum, unauthorized lawn decorations, improper flag display, noise complaints from wind chimes." Evelyn's brow arched, her hazel eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" she said, her tone calm but edged with steel. No response came. Instead, the men stepped forward, Yunin vy Ted, their boots crossing the threshold of her welcome mat onto the first tile of her porch. Doyle flipped open his clipboard, reading aloud as if reciting scripture. "Section 14C of the River View Heights Homeowners Association Code. Residents may not display political or provocative imagery visible from the street. Your flag violates that clause." Evelyn's gaze flicked to the flag. Thomas's flag, a symbol of their shared defiance, flown in that same spot for 14 years. Her grip on the doorframe tightened, but her voice remained steady. "I'm not aware of any such rule." "Who do you report to?" Carter's jaw twitched. "The HOA," he snapped. "Which now has an enforcement DVY shown. You've received 2 written warnings." Evelyn knew she hadn't. She checked her mail daily, her porch meticulously tended. Before she could counter, Doyle strode into her garden, crouching beside a pink flamingo statue, shaking his head with mock disapproval. "These are non-compliant," he muttered, as if her garden were a crime scene. The air grew heavy, the cicadas hum fading under the weight of their audacity. Evelyn drew a breath not deep, just enough, her mind racing, calculating. These men weren't just pushy, they were predators, their authority a flimsy facade. River View Heights HOA was a sleepy committee of retirees and a craft blogger named Linda, whose fiercest debate was over string lights. There was no enforcement DVY shown, no rules banning hostile symbols, or wind-based noise DVYCS. Evelyn, who'd once memorized the HOA charter during a long winter, saw through their charade. But she didn't argue. Not yet. She watched, her silence a weapon, honed by years of standing firm. Carter took another step, his boots thudding on her porch's wooden planks. He flipped open a folder of laminated sheets, pointing to a crooked name tag. "Saw Officer Carter Saul. We're here to collect fines," he said, his tone slick, practiced. "Saves you the trouble of a hearing." Doyle, still in the garden, nodded, inspecting a ceramic mushroom with exaggerated disdain. $75 for VI soul clutter," he called out. "Another 100 for unauthorized expression." Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. I haven't received any notices, she said flatly. Carter smirked, tapping his clipboard. 2 last month. 1 taped to your mailbox, 1 left on your porch. I check my mail every morning, she replied, her voice a quiet blade. Nothing's been taped here since the last garage sale flyer. Doyle, undeterred, wandered deeper into her yard, his fingers grazing the pole of Thomas's flag. Then, with a single, deliberate yank, he tore it down. The wood snapped, the fabric fluttered to the ground like a fallen soldier. The sound echoed louder than it should have via violation not just of her property, but of her history, her loyalty, her line in the sand. Evelyn didn't flinch. She didn't shout. But something in her eyes shifted, a spark igniting behind the calm. This wasn't just about a flag. It was about respect, boundaries, and a legacy forged in sweat and sacrifice. Carter chuckled, a smug, hollow sound. Lady, we saw the law, he said, his words dripping with false confidence. Doyle, emboldened, shouldered past a potted fern, knocking it over. Soil spilled across the steps like blood from a wound. Let's just take what's owed, he muttered, eyeing her porch bench as if it were loot. That was the moment. Not the lies, not the flag, but the casual desecration of her home, her sanctuary. Evelyn stepped back, her movements deliberate, a chess master plotting her endgame. Get off my porch, she said, her voice low, unshakable. Now. Carter raised a brow, amused. Doyle didn't budge. Evelyn retreated across the threshold, closing the door with a gentle click, the lock sliding into place like a vow. She whispered to herself, to the empty house, to Thomas. Time to remind them. The house, once warm and cozy, now thrummed with purpose. Evelyn glided through the levying room, past framed photos of her grown children, past the shadow box of Thomas's medals. At the end of the hall, behind a quilt-covered armchair, was a door, nearly in VY Cybele beneath ivy-patterned wallpaper. Few noticed it. Fewer knew its secrets. She entered a 6-digit code 741963, their anniversary, his badge number in a keypad Thomas had installed decades ago. A soft click. The door swung open, cool basement air brushing her cheek like a ghost's caress. She descended the concrete steps, each one a declaration. In the dim glow of a single bulb, a military trunk waited, matte green, stenciled with SAW CPL Thomas Harper, USMC SAW. She hadn't opened it since his funeral, but every Memorial Day, she dusted its hinges, whispered his stories. Now she lifted the lid. Inside was his legacy, an M16 rifle, legally owned, meticulously maintained, a promise etched in steel. A folded oilcloth, faintly scented with cedar and metal. A faded photo of them in Saigon, young, fearless, dust on their boots. Evelyn touched the photo, her fingers lingering, then reached for the rifle. She checked the chamber with steady hands, slung it over her shoulder like a mantle of duty. Not revenge, she murmured, almost to Thomas. Principle. Outside, the wind had picked up, the broken chimes clinking like a distant alarm. Carter and Doyle were tearing through her backyard, the garden gate swinging loose, Thomas's hand-built windmill half dismantled. Doyle yanked at its base while Carter rummaged through her flower beds, as if her roses hid contraband. Then came a sound clean, precise, unmistakable. Saw click saw. The slide of a rifle's bolt, a punctuation mark on their arrogance. They froze, turning slowly. Evelyn stood on the back porch, the setting sun igniting her silver hair. The M16 rested at her side, not raised, not aimed, but its presence screamed louder than any shout. She wasn't trembling, wasn't raging. She was certainty incarnate. This is private property, she said, her voice steady as granite. Last warning? The world held its breath. The windmill's creak stopped. Carter's bravado crumbled, his eyes locked on her. Doyle fumbled, dropping a ceramic bird bath, its shards scattering across the grass. You're insane, he stammered, stumbling back. Evelyn stepped forward, the porch creaking beneath her. No, she said evenly. I'm prepared. It wasn't just the rifle. It was her life, her resolve, her right to stand unbowed. Carter's mouth opened, then closed, his fake badge suddenly heavy. Doyle was already inching toward the gate, his courage dissolving. Evelyn watched, patient, hoping they'd choose retreat over escalation. This wasn't about violence. It was about consequence. Carter bolted, his clipboard clattering to the lawn, tripping in his haste, scrambling through the gate like a scolded child. Doyle, less graceful, slipped on mulch, face planting into a garden gnome, flailing before crawling after his partner. They didn't look back, piling into a mud-streaked silver pickup with peeling community code compliance magnets, tires squealing as they fled. Evelyn returned inside, dialed the sheriff's office, her voice calm. River VYEW Heights. Evelyn Harper. 2 men trespassed, posing as HOA officers. I have them on camera. 10 minutes later, a sheriff's SUV pulled up. Deputy Mark Torres, who knew Evelyn's Christmas cookies by heart, stepped out. Mrs. Harper, you okay? He asked. She nodded, leading him to the kitchen, where the scent of cobbler lingered. She handed over Carter's abandoned clipboard, laminated pages listing absurd fines. $75 $4. VY Soul Clutter. $124. Unauthorized expression. Even a porch clutter tax. With a photo of her lavender pots. Her Ring camera footage was damning. Carter's swagger, Doyle's greedy hands, their fake authority poses. Torres sighed, not shocked, but weary. We've been after these guys for weeks. They target seniors, especially those alone. You might have saved this neighborhood, Mrs. Harper. Evelyn didn't smile. She offered him cobbler, and he accepted, because in River VYEW Heights, justice came with a side of sweetness. By dusk, Torres spotted the silver pickup, parked crookedly at a Whole Foods lot. Carter paced outside, barking into a phone. Doyle, in the passenger seat, sorted stolen receipts. They noticed the squad car too late. Evening, gentlemen, Torres said, his tone deceptively mild. Mind explaining your business? Carter flashed a rehearsed grin. Neighborhood patrol, just wrapping up. Torres eyed the plastic badge, saw River VYEW Enforcement Authority saw. Funny, he said. We don't have one. The search was swift and brutal. 6 fake badges, each with grandiose titles, saw Senior Investigator saw Citation Specialist saw. Pre-filled violation notices for aggressive wind decor and flag messaging breach. $3,200 in cash, bundled with notes like collected, no receipt. A replica stun to VYC, built for fear, not legality. And a spreadsheet titled Active Targets, listing elderly residents, their addresses, and chilling notes. Soft-spoken, compliant, resistant, needs pressure. Carter muttered about expanded HOA authority. Doyle claimed they were volunteer peacekeepers. Torres wasn't buying it. You picked the wrong woman, he said, snapping cuffs on Carter's wrists. In court, the truth spoke louder than any theatrics. Evelyn's Ring footage, neighbor testimonies, and a financial trail. Carter and Doyle had been ousted from the real HOA for embezzlement sealed their fate. When Evelyn took the stand, the room stilled. They thought the elderly were easy prey, she said, her voice clear, unwavering. But you don't walk onto someone's porch and rewrite their rights. Not in my town. Not ever. The judge, stern but visibly moved, sentenced Carter and Doyle to 5 years for impersonation, fraud, trespassing, and extortion. No parole. No applause followed, just a collective exhale. The storm passed. Evelyn walked out, head high, no glance at the men in orange jumpsuits. River VYEW Heights bloomed and new flags waved, lawns sprouted gnomes and pinwheels. Evelyn's settlement funded a steel fence, motion sensor lights, and a gate etched with, "Saw trespassers will be humiliated saw." Locals chuckled, but none tested it. She taught suburban self-defense. At the community center, her classes packed with teens, retirees, even cops, all drawn to her quiet strength. They called her the Rambo of River Vyew, a nickname she feigned to dislike, though the mug bearing her silhouette sat proudly on her mantel. Her porch remained pristine, the flag flying unapologetically. Passers-by didn't just see a tidy house, they saw a warning: when systems falter, when imposters knock, Evelyn Harper answers. Not with noise, not with fear, but with a legacy of steel, a principle unbroken, and if pushed, a quiet saw click saw that says saw not here. Not today. Saw.